Once again, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Jane Robbins.
Okay, thank you. All right, up to now we've made you mad, now we're going to make you scared. Because we're going to talk about the data collection part of this. How the feds are tracking your child. In the stimulus bill that we've mentioned before, there was a requirement that if you access this money in the State Fiscal Stabilization Fund, you had to agree to expand your state student database. And then that was also a requirement in the Race to the Top competition. You had to agree to do that too. What that ends up with is a massive student database, and we're going to talk about that a little bit. To me, this is the most troubling part of the whole Common Core scheme. And no, the standards themselves do not require data collection, but the entire scheme requires data collection. One thing that we need to focus on, because Sandy and Zev have talked about the low level of these standards, this doesn't make sense to people. They say, why are we doing this? If we're really trying to be competitive, why are we doing this? You have to remember that Common Core is not an educational model. It is a workforce development model. What they're interested in is developing workers, entry-level workers for jobs. And James Milgram said that, the mathematician who was on the validation committee, he wrote an op-ed about this. He said they're really not concerned with developing people who can do higher level mathematics. They're concerned about people who can go into entry-level jobs. That's pretty much it. And so are colleges going to be, what's going to happen when these kids get to college and suddenly they can't do it? Well, there was something in the Chronicle of Higher Education last week. It was a huge spread with a lot of different articles about how Bill Gates is spending hundreds of millions of dollars to remake higher education. He spent over $470 million so far to redo colleges. So the idea being that everything would be redone along this kind of industrial workforce school-to-work model. So the colleges would accept what they get. And the added benefit of this is that you don't actually have to have these kids who are prepared for college. You can just declare them ready for college. And here they are. They go into this sort of dumbed-down college curriculum, and they do okay there. And so it looks like everybody's doing great. So that's where we are. Now, the data collection model, it's the lab rat view of the citizens, that we exist to be studied. And the government will study us, and the government will come up with all of these models and equations and algorithms of what we do and why we do it and what should we be doing and how can we be made to do it. I read a quote a couple of weeks ago that I like. Do y'all know who Jonah Goldberg is? Anybody read Jonah Goldberg? He wrote Liberal Fascism, which was one of the funnier books. He can write about just horrifying things in a very funny way. But he was writing about data, and he said, what's the point of this, the whole progressive data thing? He said, beneath all of it is the idea that if planners can just get enough data, if they can clock, measure, and weigh enough about the citizenry, the planners will be able to use that insight to sculpt the clay of the masses into a form to the planners' liking. The drift of economic freedom will give way to the mastery of a government empowered by the scientific method. Once you make society legible, you can start cutting and pasting. That's what they're doing with data. Okay, so the essential element here is that you've got to have this massive database on students. Now, and preferably going from preschool or earlier through the workforce so that you can track people and you can see what education programs they went through and how did that affect them. What did they do when they got out of school? Did they go to college? If so, which college? What courses did they take? How well did they do? Did they drop out? Did they go to the military? Did they get in trouble with the law? What jobs did they take? How much did they earn? Did they move to a different job? Did they move to a different state? They want to be able to track all of that, and that is what all of this is aiming towards. Now, there's a federal statute that prohibits the federal government from, that prohibits the federal government from maintaining a national student database. But what they're doing then through all of these federal grants is to get the states to build the databases. And they have to be essentially identical. They have to adopt the 12 common elements of the database so things can be shared. All right. I'm going to ditch the PowerPoint and just go to this because we've got some other things that... All right, I don't know what is going on with this PowerPoint. Okay. All right, this is the statute that talks about the federal, you may not have a federal student database. Okay, the 2009 stimulus bill said what they want to be able to do is to capture, analyze, and use student data from preschool to high school, college, and the workplace. And what kind of data are we talking about? We're talking, according to the National Education Data Model, states are recommended to be collecting over 400 data points on each child. It's not a requirement, but that's the direction that everybody is encouraged to go. This would include things such as health care history, disciplinary history. So if your child has a rough 7th grade year and gets suspended for a couple of days, it's going to be there forever. Religious affiliation, voting status, all kinds of things. It sort of goes on and on and on. Now, so what happens if the federal government were to get its hands on this data? Well, it used to be that there was federal student privacy law. There's a statute called FERPA. It's the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act. FERPA was gutted about a year and a half ago by the administration. They did it through regulation, not through statute, because statute would require people to debate it and vote on it. So they did it through regulation. Now, any information that goes to the federal government can be shared with literally anyone in the world, and this is personally identifiable student-level data. If they get it, they can share it with anybody. The only thing they have to do is to use the right language. They have to say that I can give it to you because you are an authorized representative to receive this data because you're going to do some sort of study or something for me. So they can share it with anybody in the world. Now, the U.S. Department says, well, but you don't have to worry about that because this is just aggregate data. We only get aggregate, meaning, we get data on all 4th graders or whatever. It's not individual data. However, the Smarter Balanced Assessment Consortium, of which Idaho is a member, has a cooperative agreement with the U.S. Department of Education that says that Smarter Balanced will make available to the U.S. Department on an ongoing basis student-level data for research. So whatever goes to Smarter Balanced, and remember, Smarter Balanced has not gone into effect yet. It doesn't until 2014. But whatever data they get, and we don't know exactly what it is they're going to get, but if they get it, it's going to the U.S. Department because that's in the cooperative agreement. Now, what if you were to get out of Smarter Balanced? Because a lot of people are doing that. Well, we have been told by people in Texas, especially who are not in Common Core and not in any of these tests, that the U.S. Department of Education is becoming very aggressive about getting personally identifiable data on students. And if they get it, they do it in conjunction with other grants, school improvement grants, that kind of thing. If we're going to give you this money, you're going to give us the data. That's the way they're going to do it. They've spent hundreds of millions of dollars helping states develop these massive data systems. They're going to get that data. It's an investment for them, and they're not going to throw that money away from their standpoint. They are going to get the data one way or the other. If they have to do it through the power of the purse, that's what they will do. And now, where might they send it? Well, they have a joint agreement with the Department of Labor right now because all of this, remember, this is a workforce development model. The whole point is to develop the workforce. So you need to share the data with the U.S. Department of Labor, right? And the Department of Labor has made it clear what they're doing with it. They will be developing or improving state workforce data systems with individual level information and enabling workforce data to be matched with education data. So individual level information going to the Department of Labor, and then where else might it go? It could go to the Department of Health and Human Services. It could go to the IRS, yes. And now they say also, well, but this will be it'll be anonymized. They will take the names out and they'll give each child a student, I can't remember exactly what it's called, but a student identifier number. Okay. Everybody that I talk to in the data industry laughs when we say that. Because with data matching, there's no such thing, really. They say you can match people to their data just like that. When you've got 400 different data points, 20 years ago, they did something in Kentucky. They were trying to match to de-anonymize some data, and they were able, on students who took certain tests, and they were able to do it with 87% accuracy, and this was 20 years ago when they didn't have nearly as much data as they've got now. So when they say, don't worry about it because we're giving them an anonymous student number, that is not going to help at all. Okay. All right, so what is Idaho collecting? I don't really know what Idaho's collecting. Y'all might want to do an open records request at some point and find out. See if they'll give you the fields, the data fields that they're collecting. But I went and looked at the Race to the Top application that Idaho submitted when they were describing what they were going to be doing with student data if they got this money. Presumably this is what they want to do. Now, unfortunately, Idaho, they say, is one of the last states to fully implement a statewide longitudinal data system. Now, this is from the Idaho Department of Education, and they don't think much of y'all. They say, as a rural western state, strongly held beliefs in local control and limited government have made it necessary for Idaho to take the time to create an appropriate plan for the design and use of a data system. What they're saying is because our people are so backward, they really believe in this local control stuff, and it's hard to get past that cultural thing. So they say Idaho is a little bit behind, and I hope that y'all will make sure you do everything you can to make sure that they continue to be behind. But what do they want to do with it if they got this money? Well, they wanted to, historically, Idaho's stakeholders, and when they talk about stakeholders, they mean teachers and parents and all kinds of people and researchers. And they say Idaho's stakeholders have had minimal access to robust sources of data. This is simply no longer acceptable. And all unions, researchers, and policymakers would be included in this. They want to be able to warehouse and integrate the appropriate kinds of data sets so that they can get everything they need. To support a P20, that means preschool through workforce and workforce data system. They want to be able, let me see, they'll develop a data warehouse for PK workforce data. They want to facilitate the exchange of data across agencies and states. They want to be able to exchange education data with the Department of Corrections and Health and Welfare. So within the state, they're going to be trading data, and it gets better. The system that they envision will enable exchange of data from state to state. Idaho will create a structure through which states can exchange individual level data, identify and standardize a set of core data elements, create a set of regular reporting mechanisms, and develop the processes and procedures for FERPA compliance. Well, we've already seen that FERPA is essentially no more, so they can say that they're FERPA compliant all they want to, but that doesn't mean anything. And in the appendix to this, they talked about some of the things that they wanted to do with the data. It's not just people's test scores. That's so 20th century. They want to be able to collect academic, social, emotional, and behavioral information on students. This is from the Idaho Race to the Top application, and the appendices there too. Okay, so that's the mindset. that you've got going here. Let me see what else I've got on this thing. Okay, I don't know if anybody recognizes this report. If you watched Glenn Beck in the last few months, you may have seen it. This is a report that was on the Department of Education, U.S. Department of Education website. It was done by the Office of Educational Technology. And they talk about how you've got to be able to measure more than just what people know. You've got to be able to measure their grit, tenacity, and perseverance, because that's what's going to make them successful in these jobs that central planners are going to have for them. So how do you measure this? Some of the most promising new directions are educational data mining and effective computing. What is effective computing? This is what it means. Discrete emotions particularly relevant to reactions to challenge, such as interest, frustration, anxiety, and boredom, may be measured through an analysis of facial expressions, EEG brainwave patterns, skin conductance, heart rate variability, posture, and eye tracking. And helpfully, on page 44 of the report, they give us pictures of the devices that they would use to measure these physiological responses that kids have when they are taking tests or doing whatever they're doing. Facial expression camera, posture analysis seat, pressure mouse, wireless skin conductance sensor. So that's what they're talking about. Now, I am not saying that when the Smarter Balance test goes into effect in 2014, your children are going to be hooked up to these people, to these things. However, what I'm saying is this was a report that was done by the U.S. Department of Education and put on its website. This is the mindset of the people that are in control here. And if you read this 120-something page report, there is maybe one paragraph that talks about the privacy invasion of this. The main thing that they talk about as problems with this is that it's not practical for the classroom yet. At about the same time, they sent out a report called Expanding Evidence Approaches for Learning in a Digital World. And this talks about when you just plug everybody into the computer and everything they're doing is on the computer. The good thing about the digital learning, from their point of view, is that it enables you to collect huge amounts of data on the people who are using these products, because what you have to remember is for digital learning, it's not just an alternative means of accessing text. It's not like your Kindle, where you've got a book that is, either you read it in pages or you read it on the Kindle. It's interactive stuff, and every time you interact with that, you put off data. It's called data exhaust. And they say as learning resources are deployed, learners will generate vast quantities of data whenever they interact with the learning resources. Big data can be used to collect extensive information about individuals or groups of learners, and the data can be used to adapt a learning resource. Adaptations can also be based on motivational or affective factors, affective being those physiological things that we talked about. And then you can combine it with data from social services agencies that students may engage with outside schools, such as juvenile justice, the foster care system, or youth development. So we learn to ask new kinds of questions and to better understand relationships between students' conditions outside school and their in-school behaviors and experiences. So this is truly wanting to know everything that there is to know about this child. And there's a think tank person in Kentucky who had pointed out that when you start integrating all of these systems and sharing the data, if you've got a child who had a DUI when he was 17 or something, and so he's in the court system, and get a lawyer and he gets him out of it, but he's got to do whatever, but it will be expunged when he's 18. When they're sharing the data with the school, these people, this stuff is not going to be expunged. This is going to be spread across different agencies. And because this is a workforce development model, wouldn't it be helpful to particular politically connected companies, such as, I don't know, let's pull one out of the air, Microsoft, to know what attitudes and behaviors people have when people are applying for jobs? Well, let me look at the data here and see what this person is really like. Also, they want to be able to do predictive analytics, meaning they don't want to just know what the child knows. They want to be able to predict what the child is going to do. And every time I think of that, I think of Minority Report. You might see the movie Minority Report with Tom Cruise, where they predict who's going to commit the crimes, and so therefore they arrest them before they do it. Data collection and data mining opens up possibilities for assessing non-cognitive features such as persistence and leadership that are recognized as important, that cannot be measured reliably and efficiently in the past. You have to measure everything. Okay, there was something in October of 2012, there was a conference put on by the U.S. Department of Education, and you cannot make this stuff up. They called it Datapalooza. And they had all these people from the different companies to come in and talk about all these wonderful things they could do with data. And I pulled out this one quote from Sean Bay, who's the CEO of a company. He said, "We collect billions of records of data. We're pulling data from everywhere, tens of thousands of places. And Common Core is the glue that ties everything together." Okay. So where are we going? The Bill Gates view of the world, which we talked about, the top-down managed economy, because it's a workforce development model. Now, what can we do about this? What's going on in other states, and what can you do? Well, what's going on in other states is the same thing that's essentially going on here, which is people are starting to wake up to it and starting to realize it. In Indiana this year, which was one of the two states that were probably the most invested in Common Core, Florida being the other one because of Jeb Bush. In Indiana, they had no hope of getting out of Common Core until the two moms who didn't like the math question called their state senator. And his mother happened to be the leader of Eagle Forum in Indiana. And that worked out well. So Indiana passed a statute this year calling a halt to Common Core, to the implementation, until they could do a study of it, and they're doing that over the summer, and Dr. Stotsky's going to be, and is ever you involved in the Indiana stuff too? Yes. So they're involved in all the studies of that. The governor, the new governor, the old governor, Mitch Daniels, was very pro-Common Core. The new governor is at least willing to listen, Mike Pence, and he signed the statute. So Indiana has called a halt to it. Michigan defunded the Common Core this year. They're also fighting about it this summer. Pennsylvania has done the same thing. There are movements going on all over the place. In Georgia, we hope to be out of it in September. We've got a governor who is very much in favor of Common Core. However, he has a re-election campaign coming up. And he's got somebody running against him in the primary who says, he said it would have taken me 3 seconds to say no to Common Core. In Alabama, in Ohio, Tennessee, North Carolina, Louisiana, Colorado, Michigan, Wisconsin, all over the place. There are movements all over the place to, and Phyllis Schlafly, who was, y'all know, was head of Eagle Forum, has said that she has never seen, that since the ERA, she has not seen an issue that has galvanized people the way this one has. And the reason is that this is our children that we're talking about. And there's so many things that, sometimes we feel like hockey goalies, that we're just fighting off pucks from all directions. But this is one that, if they get this one, everything else falls into place. So we have to fight this one. This is the most important thing that we can do. So what do you do about it? Well, yes, you can get out of it. And you may have to do some things with the waiver and all this kind of stuff, but yes, you do have the authority to get out of it. The best thing to do, the easiest thing to do, is for your state board of education to say, okay, well, we overturn the decision. However, that's probably not going to happen. You need to get your legislature to make them do it, to say we are out of this. And you need to find people who are on, and of course Valerie and Stephanie are really good at this and are on this, and they know people that are the best allies for you in the state legislature. But it will require, especially since you've got a governor who signed the agreement to go into it to start with, and a state school superintendent who speaks around the country talking about how great it is, it's going to have to be legislators who are willing to stand in the gap, who are willing to say, I don't care what you say about me, I don't care what you accuse me of, I don't care about, you can call me black helicopter person, whatever you want to. We've seen in Georgia that the people on the other side play hardball, and the people who are willing to take the slings and arrows of this and maybe see money go to somebody else's district rather than their own district. That's what we've seen in Georgia. There is so much money involved in this. Go to this website, stopcommoncore.com. There's also another website called truthinamericaneducation.com. Oh, you've got, I didn't bring it with me. Yeah, this is the report, the grit, tenacity, and perseverance. I don't think you can find it on their website anymore, but you can, if you just Google it, you can get it. It was still up last time I looked. But anyway, this is something we can win. And remember that when Bill Clinton was doing this Goals 2000 thing back in the 90s, and it was, let me see, it was about 48 states, I think, that had signed on to Goals 2000. So it was completely inevitable. There was nothing you could do about it. Well, Goals 2000 went down. Now we've got 45 states, and we've got states talking about getting out of this. It will go down. I think that Common Core is going down. The only question is, how long will it take, how much money will be wasted, and how many children do we lose in the process? It's something that we have to do. We have got to draw the line here and stand on this, because if we don't, heaven help us. So, thank you.